So our keynote is Nina Butler and with Stina, and her title is In Transition from Business as Usual to a New Paradigm. I had the privilege of meeting Nina, I think probably about 5 years ago in Atlanta, Georgia at WasteCon. And so here we are, I think at WasteCon talking about recycling, zero waste, and we were kind of the outliners, but I had to give it to Nina because she got in front of all those waste haulers and old school thinking and really set the precedents for what the future will be. And as we talked about this morning, it's about ushering in a new era. And Nina's just brilliant. You'll see her tools with circularity in action, but more importantly, the people that she is in front of educating about the zero waste circular economy. So without further ado, Nina Butler. And you should be able to share your screen now.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's really an honor to be here. And let's see, I think I got my screen here. All right, well, I actually just flew back from California late last night, and I do wish I could actually be in person. It's been a long time. So Stephanie, thank you for inviting me to participate in this. And I just want to also acknowledge the amazing team that makes this happen. I know it's an incredible volunteer group that makes this happen. Oh, it looks like it's automatically changing for me. So what I wanted to do is get into just a really quick overview of Stina. We're a research and technology company, and we have a suite of tools, as Stephanie mentioned, to help support the transition to a more efficient circular system. We are collaborators seeking better data that raises awareness. And while recycling is essential for circularity, there is much more needed, which is why we rebranded to Stina Inc. from more recycling to more accurately reflect our vision. Stina is, to us, means balance. Our logo conveys our focus, striving for our North Star, which is harmony with nature. Unfortunately, I don't feel that we have truly begun to shift from the linear model. I think we are heavily entrenched. This week, we released a report for the Canadian government documenting the biggest obstacles we believe to circularity for plastics. You can find that on our website. So here we go. I'd say the longer that I live, the less certain I am of anything. And I know our current system is truly failing us. I do know we must embrace a new paradigm. And transitions are often messy and harder on some than others. I think that's a really important consideration. And also, I'm going to share some of the experiences that have shaped my perspective so that we can hopefully collectively find what I kind of consider the third way. I've been stuck struggling in this reality that technology is both killing us, but also may be essential in saving us. And so I want you to kind of consider this question as we imagine if we could achieve freedom from waste. Do you put yourself in the camp that's more of the, we have to go back to a simpler way of life, we need to harmonize with nature, or are you putting more of the emphasis on where we are in terms of technology? And is there basically a third way? What if it's both of these? Oh, this is very frustrating. Sorry. And so what if, I'm afraid that we've been really hyper focused on this kind of left brain thinking as a society, and we've really exported that thinking to the rest of the world. And I think it's time to activate more of this right brain thinking that is more interconnected in nature. So here's a picture of me. It was a pretty intense trip that you'll hear a little bit more and see a little bit more on, but I wanted to give you a little insight into kind of my story into the world of the big world of plastics quickly. But in 1997, I graduated pre-med with a heavy sense that this plastic, we have a silent plague upon us. And after working at Bodega Marine Lab and running a wildlife rehab center and trying to figure out what I was going to do, I ended up running into Patty Moore, who introduced me to the plastics industry. And I got involved with some Bay Area organizations like the Northern California Recycling Association. But true to my nature, I didn't last very long working in an office. And I ended up moving to Puerto Rico with my husband. And from there, using dial-up and with rolling electrical blackouts, I worked on something, launched something that today many companies use and rely on today. And I have some reticence about that. But Patty said if I could make it work from there, then I could pretty much work from anywhere. And so I ended up moving to across the country, North Carolina. And I've always really felt drawn to work in the space that's kind of, I consider the attention of the opposites, working to build collaboration, to find that third way. In 2007, it was probably my busiest year. I got married, I got pregnant, I launched another tool. And then I also finished up my thesis at Duke University, exploring, creating a decision model to explore the trade-offs in bio-based plastic versus conventional plastics. The next 10 years, though, while I was raising my kiddos, I grew really frustrated with the lack of progress. And I felt like I was watching kind of a train wreck. And my attempts to get industry to adopt smart policy had failed. And the shale gas revolution was unfolding. So this is a picture of me leaving one of the most amazing landscapes I've ever seen, Katmai, Alaska. Very few people, a lot of bears, and an alarming amount of marine plastic. We have been conducting, Stina and previously more recycling, the annual plastic recycling study for more than 10 years in the US and Canada. And data over time is pretty revealing. 2016, you can see, is kind of the high water mark for plastic recycling so far. And before 2017, numbers were ticking up. And the problem was I wasn't kind of looking outside of the world of recycling. And so my view is like, well, things are marginally improving. But it was nowhere close to the rate to get to circularity. China cutting off demand should not have come at any surprise, even though it did seem to. And we didn't quite expect the shale gas revolution and a pandemic. So we've had this perfect storm, but basically we got caught with our pants down, I think. Instead of preparing to recover our own waste by building a more efficient marketplace, we've been fanning the flames of an out of control waste crisis. And we knew this when I was back on the board of the Northern California Recycling Association and produced a video then warning of this. 2004, we have definitely known. But can I get back to the data here? Some of the highlights from the study. Overall, we recovered a minimum of 5 billion pounds, mostly packaging. A few categories increased, like the return to retail material, but PET and HDPE bottles, with PET being the most mature recycling stream, had the biggest drop at nearly 40 million pounds. And if this isn't a case for a national bottle bill, I don't know what is. You can dig deeper into this. The entire full report is made available on circularityinaction.com. Okay, so there's a meme going around right now on LinkedIn that's talking about, after COP, I'll give up drinking by 2050. So back to 2018, which almost feels like a lifetime ago, I decided to attend the World Petrochemical Conference in Texas. I wanted to get a bigger perspective as to why it's so hard for companies to do the right thing and stop creating waste. In 2018, there's a celebration in the air with innovation, investment from our government to support that innovation, and deregulation led to this whole shale gas revolution. It was in full swing, and the US is becoming energy independent. You could feel around this conference, it was like a celebration of the golden era of petrochemicals. And any mention of action reminds me of that meme. It's just like, well, eventually we're going to make these commitments. I left that conference literally in a cold sweat, realizing the plastic paradox. With so much supply of natural gas and the projected growth in electric vehicles, there was less demand expected for fuel. In addition to pumping, there was more out of the ground, but there was going to be a lot more capacity coming online for plastics to offset that lack of demand. If people are burning less by shipping things in lighter packaging in electric vehicles, then a new market must be exploited. And someone suggested I join the stage the following year, and I just kind of laughed, like, what would I possibly say? But as it happened, I joined IHS Markit. They convinced me to work on this global analysis looking at supply and demand, and we gained incredible insight, more terrifying. But I think we were all sobered by the need to really find these solutions at the scale of the problem, and hearing analysts at IHS say those words instead of me gave me some solace. So in 2019, I actually was invited to join and be on stage at the executive panel for the World Petrochemical Conference. And I said, that they had lost their social license and that the petrochemical industry is holding back progress by not embracing smart policy. And that we have to really essentially lean into this new economic paradigm. After exploring more on this global view with the market dynamics, I really learned not to mess up my PowerPoint with, anyway, timing. So it's during my career that I also want to acknowledge that recycling, we've had the greatest growth in plastic waste. And in some ways, I've helped support the status quo by demonstrating small wins. And as I said on the stage, that I was worried in my career of putting out a bunch of small flames only to have the inferno behind us. And I think that we have done that. The inferno's here and yet no meaningful action underway. We need to recycle more and drive greater efficiency than consumption, but that's counter to what fuels our current economy. So we sit pretty much like that frog in the boiling water. So here's an example of insights from the work with IHS. So even if we're wildly successful at getting every bottle back and getting the consumer to put it in the right bin, we still have this massive delta between the production of virgin plastic and the total reclamation capacity for all reclaimers for the olefins, high density, low density polypropylene. So there has been significant investment, that I will say, in recycling, but also not at the pace that the investment's happening for virgin production. Data plus perspective is a commodity, but it's also been, I have to say, a burden that I worry I haven't done enough to sound the alarm. And after exploring more of the global view with market dynamics modeled out until 2050, anything short of a major paradigm shift will result in much more fuel for the linear economic engine. During my career, oops, sorry, I'm gonna just keep on moving because I want to make sure I have enough time here. So since 2019, I've had some pretty life-altering adventures. I joined an environmental activist industry reps on a ship to hash out the plastic crisis, and with treats of fine wine and glass bottles and solid wood and steel rooms, I remember feeling the same cold sweat I felt leaving my first World Petrochemical Conference. We have these dueling threats, and while working to solve plastic waste problem, bunker fuel was just billowing out. Not to mention, we all flew in for the expedition that left from Bermuda. We have opened Pandora's box with plastics, and we now have a sea of paradoxes to navigate. The biggest issue is likely still elusive. An Indigenous woman on board expressed her disappointment and so little focus on finding connection in the source of life. We were approaching it mostly from this left brain approach, although there were amazing artists on board and adding incredible dimensions. I still feel like we were missing the mark, but I am forever grateful for Dave Ford, who organized the Ocean Plastic Leadership Network and now is doing the Global Plastic Treaty Dialogues to go deeper into this tension of the opposites. And after the Atlantic Gyre trip, I was invited to be a subject matter expert at X Prize. So Dave Ford connected me to another Mr. Ford. The Visionary 2019 was focused on sustainability, which is a big shift. So circularity was really finally starting to take hold in the mainstream. And yes, that is Harrison Ford carrying a water bottle. I kind of told myself maybe he just picked it up to prevent it from becoming litter, but again, we can't, I'm just working on not being judgmental in this space as we lean into the circular economy. This Nat Geo event preceded my first presentation to the World Bank in DC just before the pandemic hit. And I remember feeling like I wanted to crawl under a rock, but I also felt this huge responsibility to convey the fact that we just simply aren't doing enough to prevent the crisis. And then in 2020, I was asked to testify at a Senate committee. That again, that cold sweat feeling returned, again, mostly because I worried I wouldn't be able to convey the urgency of the matter. And I left DC feeling like no action would be made to address the most important goal, sustaining life on Earth. And more than a year later, I feel largely the same way. The next cold sweat came when I was asked to join OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. I conveyed a need for the world to shift economically so that countries may profit from protecting natural assets rather than extracting all of their own oil and gas. but I was the only American. And I was also, as I said earlier, we are in the golden era of petrochemicals. We are now one of the majors exporting oil. Our current administration held the largest offshore oil and gas lease sale in US history just after COP26. We have even tapped into reserves because cheap oil and gas is king. It is the top priority for our economy. And if a political party wants to stay in power, they have to keep gas cheap. Another major discussion during OPEC was the future, 5G, 6G, 7G. The whole world will be connected, and what will run the server farms. So I asked this question a lot: what would we be willing to give up? What am I willing to give up? You know, I tried to take a cold shower this morning. The wire coating, all plastic coating, all of these things that give us our modern conveniences are difficult to give up, and none of them are slated to go in the curbside bin. None of them, for the most part, can be mechanically recycled right now. And I certainly have not given up. Here, this whole picture is filled with all kinds of plastic-derived products. And then I bark at my kids to use less, reuse more, recycle right, pick up litter. But instructing is not truly teaching. We have to live in a way that we want our kids to adopt. And I certainly personally have not yet done that. So it's great that we do these camping trips, but it's really looking more upstream that I personally have not yet been able to fully do. This is a very oversimplified material flow. But I think it's important to look at this from prior to the shale gas revolution. We imported 60% of our oil and gas, and we know the ramifications of that in terms of conflict around the world. 7 presidents before Trump had tried to become energy independent. This was the big goal. Things just fell into place. It was just happened to be things happening in terms of the energy dependence happening in this previous administration. And conventional wisdom says how great the US can be if we help other world economies like India and China get off burning so much coal. This is the rationalization of new pipelines. We are in a zero-sum game. The focus this winter is on, for the analyst perspective, is how cold will it be and how much will that lead to an energy crisis, what the world will experience. We are in a self-perpetuating problem. Instead of focusing on efficiency, we are focusing on maximizing short-term profit. I just stayed in an Airbnb in California that had almost no insulation and wasted a ton of water before warm water arrived. We're not hitting the basics right now. And so that like little moment of realizing just how delicate we are. I had a metal rod land on my nose, which you can maybe see the little gash there. But so the analysts say we will be consuming 55 million barrels by 2050 still. And when you look at how COVID normalized, has really normalized our new consumption patterns, this unfortunately rings potentially true. So instead of really dialing in our efficiency, we're cranking up consumption. Most people have become, with looking at PPE, the projected growth for the medical industry is driving up production of plastic. But we're also, more and more people are totally comfortable ordering more and more online and ordering out. We're rationalizing a fundamentally unsustainable way of life. And this is why I kind of keep thinking about superhuman. The fossil fuels, and by extension plastics, have given us truly superhuman capabilities. Even without COVID, as we navigate Industry 4.0 or the 4th industrial revolution, plastics play an incredibly pervasive role, whether it's data collection deep in the ocean, the cosmos, our own bodies. Fossil fuels are kind of like the opposite of kryptonite for us. And we would not be here in this virtual symposium without fuel and plastic. Instead of valuing the substances that give us superhuman capabilities like flying, breathing underwater, replacing hearts, we are squandering it. And again, going back to what is our role as the United States and what is happening around the world, this expected growth that the analysts talk about is expected to grow largely because of how much more demand will happen in the rest of the world as other regions want these also basic conveniences. So the growing demand for plastic and therefore waste is a symptom of a society living highly disconnected from nature. Imagine if we could source what we need more locally, supporting local farms and reducing fuel. So the question is this way of life serving us? And I don't have the answers, and I'm worried that the best and brightest are focused on moonshots rather than earth shots. And I love this quote from the late Buckminster Fuller. You never change things by fighting the existing model. To change something, build a new model that makes the old model obsolete. This is something that does give me hope. And as I've been able to interact with people more globally, I have this sense of hope because around the world, there are more extended producer responsibility policies and really logical things like giving rights to nature. So as electric vehicles and solar energy takes off in Industry 4.0, there will be a lot more mining, which is very much an equity issue. And we depend on mining operations around the globe with little oversight on environmental people. So the more that we adopt this global view of protecting nature for ourselves, the better. This is a schematic that my team has developed because it's all about trade-offs. And the more good data we have, the better choices we can make toward the ultimate goal of sustaining life. There is no silver bullet solution, but I believe there are some big objectives to focus on: preserving resources, using less, but recovering more. And one stat that came out last year, we have more human-made material on the planet than the entire living biomass. We have to think about large-scale recovery operations, and I'm afraid it requires technology that we have, for good reason, a lot of resistance to. And ultimately, we need to develop full cost accounting. We won't move into preserving resources and recovering more because the current economic drivers are counter to that. So with full cost accounting, I think is the way to shift to out of the linear model. Paradoxically, though, technology has a role to play in creating the transparency needed to drive efficiency. So imagine if we did have full cost accounting. It would make complete sense for, say, a petrochemical company to partner with a waste company and urban mine a landfill. Petrochemical companies have figured out way more complex challenges with refining oil from tar sands or drilling deep in the ocean floor. As I heard from one, they said they're literally moving plastic marine debris out of the way so they can drill in the ocean floor. We need a new paradigm that's a win-win-win model. Nature has to be a winner or we are all losers. And fear is something I struggle with regularly as I think about my kids' future, that we must transmute that fear by loving nature, that we're all a part of it. And we get to live during this time. That's the other thing I keep thinking, we get to live during this. And instead of filling the world up with stuff so we can more than double our economy, that does not sound like freedom. By 2050, the world economy is expected to grow from 86 trillion to 107 trillion dollars. And I cannot wrap my head around that. But imagine if we put that energy into regenerating natural ecosystems. Nature pays back these dividends like clean water, air, food, and beauty. And let's find this third way, the new paradigm together with scientists, with economists. So what I wanted to share here is some work by Ralph Shammy and an economist with the IMF. These are the things that are giving me hope, how we can truly value the services from nature. But time is of the essence. We are seeing this incredible species of whales. The numbers are still dropping. Another positive development here is that the Nobel Prize winning stock market theory of how we can invest in saving coral. Our current system is truly just a construct, and I've struggled trying to make incremental change in a broken system, and I cannot not try to make practical changes, but I know in my heart we need to radically change. Headlines like this give me hope, and I got to do some closing remarks during the World Circular Economy Forum after talks from leaders around the world, I honestly felt like I had nothing more to add because everyone was talking about this need to adopt a new paradigm and to value nature. Witnessing these amazing grazers fertilizing this meadow, which is a significant carbon sink under Hallow Glacier, was soul touching. There must be a way for markets to pay for the cleanup of plastic waste. It's another form of an oil spill. And the longer we wait to get it recovered while eliminating new waste, the more that nature is absorbing it, the toxins that it carries. So I got to work with these folks in different capacities who inspire me and give me a sense of awe. In addition to my own team within Stina, we get to live during the most extraordinary time in history, and with more collaboration, we can spark the transition. I acknowledge these are mostly middle-aged white people. We need more youth, we need more diversity, but I think every single person that I've just shown here sees the massive inequality issues as being central to our out of balance way of life and the need for a new paradigm. Captain Andy and his partners, Scott and Max, are available today. Often Max and Andy are out on some wild expedition in Alaska, but today they're able to join. So I wanted to also bring them into this presentation. And I also just want to shed some light on this experience that has forever affected me, and I'm very grateful for the experience. All of the individuals have expanded my mind in thinking about how to work to protect nature. So I want to share the video and introduce you as well to Andy. The video was taken by Max Romey as this expedition brought together people, students and scientists, artists, engineers, all working together with multiple missions of recovering more material, documenting, researching more of the impact, and mentoring young students as we look at how to bring another generation. So let me figure out how to quickly change and share.
Marine debris is everywhere around us. It just hasn't always made it to the ocean yet.
Hi, this is Chris, he, him, and I've been your Zoom host for this conference, Behind the Scenes. I'm speaking to you from the border regions of 3 territories, the Tsalagawiti, Sa'atsoyaha, and Muskogee First Nations. We've removed Max Romey's video because we don't want to step on Max's rights as a video producer. Instead, we're providing a link to his video in the description below. The video, If You Give a Beach a Bottle, is phenomenal, and we suggest you take the time to watch. Thanks for your patience and understanding. Now let's return to the video conference in progress.
Great. Thank you so much. And Nina's going to be sharing the link. We have Max and Andy on. If you guys could come on for a few minutes, that would be great. We want to be respectful for our speakers. So if you are available and you'd like to come back at the end of today during our Zero Waste Economy session, I'd love to invite you back, and we can give you more time to present, because I know everybody really enjoyed this, and art is so critical in telling our story. So if you'd each like to say, have a few minutes to say something, and then we'd love to have you back.
Thank you. And this is Andy, and I tear up every time I watch that film, and I was there when it was made. So just great storytelling that Max has. I also really like Nina's slide on superhuman. Thank you, Nina, for that. It reminds me of a quote from Stuart Brand in his Whole Earth catalog. We are as gods and might as well get good at it. If you take the ocean, for example, to clean up the oceans and coasts as they exist now, as you saw it, is almost a superhuman feat. Nobody's quite figured out yet how to automate that process. And since none of us actually have superhuman powers, in order to clean up the ocean, we assemble in numbers, like ants, under the belief that many hands make light work. This kind of low-tech approach is the one we're applying towards the over 30,000 miles of coastline in Alaska. Our recipe is pretty simple. We put as many people we can on a boat, take them to a remote shoreline, skiff them ashore, and start picking up debris one piece at a time. Even though we've refined our approach and optimized our methods, we've been doing basically the same thing for 15 years. And it has produced results. The proposals we're writing right now will push our total historical haul to over 1 million pounds of marine debris by 2023. And this consists almost entirely of consumer and industrial plastics and derelict fishing gear, which is also mostly plastic. But we're just scratching the surface. So to clean up the ocean is superhuman, and what we need is not just many hands, but many minds. Nina's slide on the team shows our approach there, and Max's film shows our approach. Yes, we need boats and boat drivers, but we need scientists and engineers to help solve the bigger problem, and we need storytellers to light a fire under the next generation of scientists, engineers, and activists. As a species, we've made ourselves masters of this planet, but we've got a long way to go to get good at it. I'm so grateful for the team that Stina has assembled to step up to this challenge, and to all of your stepping up to the challenge of achieving zero waste in our cities, communities, and institutions. So that's all for me. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today, and I'll turn it over to Max if he has any comments.
Right, and Max, I definitely want to invite you back later this afternoon. So if you could just say a couple of sentences, and just beautiful work, and then we'd love to have you back this afternoon so our attendees can get to the next speaker.
That sounds great. I'll keep it to a haiku. Let's see. Thank you. Actually, no, hold on. I'm terrible at those. Yeah, no, that was wonderful. I'll definitely be back if you have any questions. Nina, Andy know how to find me, and I'll be back this afternoon. But like Andy said, and Nina said, it's a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of pieces, and you know, big problems mean giant solutions. So really excited for what that entails.
Thank you.
Great, this has been an honor, and everybody wants the link, so if you can put it in the chat, and
awesome.
We look forward to talking to you later this afternoon. I think we can email you.